It annoys me so much when I hear gurus and property trainers and mentors talk about how HMOs are the holy grail of property investing, how it's easy money. You take a single AST property and you just whack some fire doors in and throw some HMO tenants in and it's $1,000 a month for you. It is not easy. There are many pitfalls, and in this video, I, Frank Flegg from Ethical Property Partners, am going to explain to you the many pitfalls of HMOs. Let me preface this by saying I have HMOs. I have about 5% of my portfolio as HMOs. There's nothing inherently wrong about HMOs, but let me tell you all the disadvantages, because I think the advantages are pushed a little too hard. The first is where you choose to site your HMO is so important. It's not a case of there are people queuing up around the block everywhere to move in and house share together. People don't watch Friends and then think to themselves, that's what I want, I'll go do that in the 2 out of 10 area of my city. No, you have to pick the right area in order to have sufficient tenant demand. Another potential pitfall of HMOs is competition. There are tons and tons of HMOs out there now, so much so that legislation and councils are clamping down on it. I'll come on to that in a minute. Another pitfall is buying a HMO where there's already tons of competition. And competition can come from many areas. One of the biggest mistakes investors make at the moment is buying in a university town and wanting to let to students, because most universities at the moment are building their own purpose-built accommodation, which is absolutely decimating the student HMO market. And so competition in your area, whether it's from universities, other landlords, is really important. Planning permission is another potential pitfall. Now, many people think that you can take a single dwelling and turn it into a 4, 5, 6 bedroom HMO without planning permission. That is true in some areas of the country, but increasingly those permitted development rights have been withdrawn by local councils. It's called an Article 4 directive, and so you must make sure that the area that you're looking to create a HMO in, you're allowed to do so without having to apply for planning permission. And if you're in an Article 4 area and you're wanting to create a HMO, it's highly likely that you'll be turned down for that planning permission. And I have seen investors purchase and then not be able to run their property as a HMO and lose a lot of money as a result. A pitfall that many investors often miss is licensing. Licensing lays out in black and white what your HMO must adhere to. It has to have a certain size kitchen for the number of people. Each bedroom has to be a certain size. The living area, if there is one, has to be a certain dimension. And also there have to be a certain number of toilets, fire escapes, fire doors, wired smoke alarms, heat detectors, etc. It's a very comprehensive list, all of which is very easy to achieve if you buy the right property at the start. And I have seen many times investors purchase a property, get planning permission to turn it into a HMO, but then not be able to license it because the structure doesn't lend itself to all those regulations. And so you have to be aware of that pitfall before you actually purchase. A pitfall that's often overlooked is the level of occupancy that could be expected. Depending on the area and depending on the type of tenants, your occupancy can vary wildly between times of year and even types of property in the same area. It is really important that you accurately forecast your ongoing occupancy, and that boils down to things like your level of marketing for your property, your level of advertising, the quality of your advertising. All of this you need to take into account. It is not a case of having 5 bedrooms to let, putting a board outside and having people queuing up ready to move in. That's not the case anymore. A massive pitfall that people underestimate all the time, largely because trainers, mentors, gurus under-egg this, is the amount of time it takes to successfully run a HMO. Oftentimes you can make £1,000, £1,500 a month, but only if you're putting in 5 or 10 hours a week, and that just is a high paying job. And so it's really important to be aware of how much time you have available and how much time your HMO requires in order to run at maximum profitability. And if I'm honest, that's why I don't have more in my portfolio. The few that I have run really profitably, but they take a lot of my team's time. And so actually, once I've employed someone to look after it really well, it's not nearly as profitable. Another pitfall is costs. People don't do their due diligence. They don't work out their numbers in advance. People do their numbers thinking like they're going to have all 6 rooms full from the get-go and their costs are going to be £50 a month. And it's just not true. Think of all the costs associated with a HMO. You've got marketing for new rooms. You've got what if a room's empty? You've got a mortgage. You've got insurance. You've got water, electricity, gas, broadband, council tax, depending on your type of tenants. These costs really make a difference to your overall turnover. And so it's absolutely critical that you work out what your likely income is, bearing in mind that we're all going to have voids at some point, what the costs are going to be that's going to come out of that income in order to work out what your net profit is at the end of the month, and then work out your hourly rate. And that's why I don't have more HMOs, because I'm not going to spend time running my own HMOs. I have to employ someone to do it. And if the hourly rate isn't a lot more than I'm paying them, it's just not worth it. The final pitfall is neighbours. HMOs generate more friction, more arguments with neighbours, so neighbouring properties, than any other property investment strategy that I use. And so you have to be prepared for the neighbours to contact you. They can find out who you are through the letting agent on land registry. They will contact you, and it can just be an additional time drain on you and an additional source of stress, because it's very hard for you to control your tenant's behaviour, but your neighbours will expect you to. In conclusion, HMOs can be a phenomenal strategy. I have them in my portfolio, but you have to know what you're doing. You have to go in with your eyes wide open, and you have to know your numbers in order to be pleased at the end of the month rather than disappointed. If you've enjoyed this video, guys, click subscribe, click like, click the notification bell, and you'll get way more of our great quality content. See you then.